You talk about what you describe as three different variants of FTD, which is behavioral, semantic, and non-fluent.
Yes.
Help us understand a little bit about each of those
Yeah.
variants.
Well, the behavioral variant is unlike any disorder in my experience in neurology, because our research criteria, which we develop for it, ask us to determine whether someone has become disinhibited or addictive. Have they become apathetic? Have they lost empathy for other people? Have they started to overeat? Have they developed compulsive behaviors? And I think from that list of our research criteria, these are not things that people, when they see these symptoms in someone they love, immediately jump to the idea that this is neurodegenerative. They think
Mm-hmm.
midlife crisis. But, when we look at the brain with an MRI, and this is what fascinated me from the time of my fellowship, we see loss of these relatively silent areas in the brain, right
Mm.
side more than left often. And so that is the behavioral variant. Sometimes it's driven by a single gene. We
Okay.
say about 20%. And I also have watched this remarkable story roll out in my lifetime where one gene after another, a mutation in a gene will cause the expression of this disease, not when someone's a child or a young adult, but, in midlife. So that's the behavioral variant. And as you can imagine, unbelievably troubling to families, to caretakers, to human resources parts of a employer's place. So
Okay. So that's the behavioral side. Let's go into semantic, which is a little different.
semantic is, I think it's a little bit elusive, but the story is we have two anterior temporal lobes. The left side is really critical for understanding words and concepts. So over time, we learn that there are animals, then we learn more specificity, there are birds, then we learn there are pigeons and hawks, and then red-tailed hawks. So we develop this knowledge that is so critical for our understanding of the world, and most
Okay.
of that is set by the time we're a teenager. So in that area of the brain, the left anterior temporal lobe starts to disintegrate. We lose this knowledge. We lose these facts. We have trouble understanding what a word means. The other side, the right side, which I find so interesting, is that on the right side, the anterior temporal lobe is really important for understanding people, for understanding and
Mm.
remembering faces, for also empathizing with faces, seeing what another person feels visually, and then responding to that. So when the left side deteriorates, it's often language based. When the right side deteriorates, it's loss of knowledge about people.
Right. Okay. Wow. All right. And then the last one, non-fluent, please.
Non-fluent's the easiest one. This was described by Paul Broca in 1863 in the setting of stroke, but the symptoms are very similar. People slowly lose the ability to express language. Their phrases are shorter. The number of words they're able to speak is diminished. They have lots of effort. They move their hands. They gesticulate, and often very isolated without any other symptoms. So this one is the easiest for families to deal with. So Marcus was the first patient I ever saw. He had eventually what we called a semantic form of progressive aphasia. No idea what that was at that point. And so Marcus came in, and he was losing language in a very peculiar way. He didn't know the meaning of many words. He'd been a very successful banker. And suddenly he became obsessed with colors. He said, I see purple, I feel purple. He came into my office as very wealthy gentleman in a purple T-shirt and yellow pants, and he always
Okay.
dressed in purple and yellow. He was obsessed with those colors, and much to the surprise of his son, he became an artist, and he spent much of his life painting, redoing the
Wow.
same painting. He actually won local awards, in his state for this art that emerged later in life. Along with it, there was disinhibition. He became, and I think it was part of this whole process, visually preoccupied. So he would take caregivers around his city looking for coins. This was a compulsion that he had. Every time, the caregiver said, he sees a coin way quicker than I do. His visual search was really incredible. And sometimes he'd go into restaurants, he'd try to sweep tips off a table, but this visual preoccupation and enhancement accompanied this journey of visual creativity.
Interesting. Well, it does sound like with FTD, it does impact the areas of the brain also that not only social, but the creative aspect of it. You kind of dig into that in a few different ways.
Yes. So Marcus began my effort to understand why someone with a degenerative disease would become a visual artist. And I started, everyone told me this was just a coincidence, it had no meaning. But I wasn't quite sure. So I started seeing people and started, unlike most neurologists, asking about strengths or new things that had emerged that were positive in the setting of their illness. And began to collect, now a large number of my patients and their beautiful art who had visual creativity emerge in the setting
Mm.
of, in most of these patients, a degeneration in the anterior temporal lobe. More recently, Bill Seeley, one of my colleagues, and Adit Friedberg showed that in these people, there was increased activation in the posterior parts of brain that are involved with visual processing. So we started to have a physiological and anatomic explanation for this change. So the loss of language seemed to release circuits in the back of the brain that
Uh,
were responsible for their painting.
my goodness. Okay.